Anneka from Wonderhub, and I'm excited to be here for this special Little Chefs video, which is a part of Wonderhub's Storyscapes program, which is a program that aims to explore the variety of ways that stories can be told. Today, we're going to be talking about how you can tell stories through food. You may have seen a series of videos on our virtual content site, Wonderworld, called Little Chef. This was a series that I was particularly excited about as I have been cooking and baking as long as I can remember, and I was excited to have an opportunity to get my little chef learning in the kitchen with me. And I'm super excited to be doing this very special Storyscapes Little Chef episode. Always been a large part of my life, and as I've gotten older, I've realized how much making food and family traditions shape who I am and influence my story. So I'm here today to talk a little bit how we can tell stories through food, and then I'll bring my little chef in and we will make one of my favorite family recipes together. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I've been cooking and baking for as long as I can remember. Both of my parents are quite skilled in the kitchen and encourage me to explore and experiment with recipes. One of the earliest things that I learned to cook was actually chocolate chip cookies. Now, I wouldn't always read the recipe correctly, and my dad would always tease me that my cookies were never the same twice. But that's okay. I learned from that how to adapt and trust my skills as a baker, and even still, sometimes my recipes don't turn out.
You want to touch it? You touch it? Yeah. Touch.
So how does food tell a story? Well, there are a few ways. First of all, what is a cookbook? It's made up of words and instructions, and there's an outcome. So, is a recipe book like a storybook? Personally, I would say yes. Cookbooks are filled with wonderful stories. Behind every recipe, there's a story of a person who was the first to make that food, bake that bread, etc. The recipe then is their success story. Like having a favorite passage in a book, we all have favorite recipes that we flag, dog-ear the pages, and keep coming back to time after time, just like a good old storybook. To me, recipes also hold a story, as I said, about the person who makes them. One year, for my birthday, I asked members of my family to write me handwritten cards of their favorite dish. I framed these and have them displayed in my kitchen. To me, these recipes represent that person, who they are, what they like, and I have a recipe card from my gramps, whose father, so my great-grandfather, was a baker from England, one from my grandma, one from my mom, and one from my aunt. So written recipes can certainly tell a story. So what are the other ways that food can tell a story? What you choose to cook and eat can reveal information about your own story, your heritage, and your preferences. So the next way that food can tell a story is through the recipes that have been passed down in your family or come from your heritage. There are certain food dishes out there that society typically associates with certain heritage, such as when you think of cabbage rolls and pierogies, you may think of Ukrainian culture, sushi for Japanese culture, and with crepes, you might think of France, and of course, poutine with Canada. These all show the story behind the recipe. And again, in my family, my great-grandparents came from Europe, so the recipes that have been passed down to me has a strong influence of that English culture and heritage behind it. So when I'm making these recipes, the ways that I follow them is more like how an English baker would than perhaps, someone here in Canada. Also, when I was passed down these recipes, I was told the story behind them. Who would make these, when this recipe would be made, And also we do know who in our family and our current family who still follows these traditions. So I'm excited to one day pass down these recipes and all the stories behind them to my little chef as well. So that is another way that food can tell a story. The last way that I want to talk about how food can tell a story is the actual act of cooking and creating. For me, cooking and baking and sharing that with my friends and family is one way that I express my love for them. I enjoy creating that perfect cupcake or that perfectly cooked steak for the enjoyment of people that I love. Food for me is a language of love, and being able to share that is what brings me joy. So the story that comes from this is more about myself as an individual, and the effort and the dedication that I put into making that food reveals a part of me, and that is something that I enjoy. It's something that I can show that I've built my skills, and that is what is part of what makes me me. Okay, so there are 3 ways that food can tell a story. Some are more tangible, such as a cookbook, and some are more intangible, such as food as a language of love. So think about in your own family. Do you have special recipes, a favorite cookbook, and are you like me and enjoy cooking for others? All of those things create a story about you. All right, so I did want to share with you a special recipe that has been passed down to me from my dad's side of the family. This recipe is part of a tradition that has been passed down through generations. Every year at Christmas, my family, my sister's family, my parents, my aunts and uncles, and some of my cousins, for Christmas morning, make a mincemeat bun Christmas tree. So mincemeat buns are similar to cinnamon buns, but instead of sugar and cinnamon, we use mincemeat as the filling. Mincemeat is an English tradition and is made up of candied fruit, and it's spiced as well. More traditional mincemeat actually contains meat, but modern day mincemeat that you buy at the store is candied fruit. We also ice the buns with a simple butter and icing sugar icing and decorate them with green and red candied cherries. Over the years, my family has adapted this recipe to suit our individual preferences. We don't specifically have a dough recipe that we use for it, just any old dough recipe that works for you, and the mincemeat as well, just whatever you can buy at the store. But personally, for my family, we've had to make some adaptations to the recipes to accommodate some food allergies, but that's okay, because that actually adds to my story. So when I make this bun, when our family makes this bun, we make it a certain way, and that's what makes it unique. All right, so I'm gonna bring in my little chef and we are going to show you how to make a mincemeat bun Christmas tree. All right, so there we go. We made a mincemeat bun Christmas tree. So for this Storyscape session, I want to challenge all of you to think about how food can tell a story in your life. Do you have a favorite recipe or traditional recipes that you use? So included with this video, there is a downloadable recipe card, which you can fill out and start creating your very own cookbook. There's a section in there to write down the recipe, and then also a little area where you can write down the story behind that recipe. All right, thanks again for joining us for Storyscapes today, and I encourage you to get creative in the kitchen and happy cooking.